Thanks a lot for taking your time for this interview. We won't take much time, we'll just do it quickly. My first question, let's start with your early days. You faced a lot of problems, adversities. I read your book. But because of the conviction, resilience of your mother, you were the first girl child in your family to go to school. Today, there are more than 3 million girls enrolled in primary, secondary schools in Afghanistan. When you look back at those days, I mean, what are the changes you see, and what do you tell yourself when you look back those days?
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad that I'm part of transformed Afghanistan. I think in my ages I have seen Afghanistan being transformed and of course has gone through tremendous challenging period, but also in the meantime has gone towards progress. If you compare like my generation with the current generation, when I was a child, my struggle was to go to school because it was so difficult in our family to convince them to send a girl child to school for social reasons, but also for mentality. The perception in Afghanistan is that the boys represent the family or hold the identity of the family than the girls. The girl will get married and finally go to the husband's house, so they are not representing the family identity. So a lot of investment actually goes to the boys' education and their future career. But in my case, it was my mother's support that I managed to go to school. My struggle was to go to school, to keep the family happy to go to school. But now my daughter's struggle is to go to the best school in Kabul, for instance. And I think that's a generation change. It's not only the struggle of my daughters to go to one of the best schools with opportunities, but I think many hundreds and thousands of other Afghan girls. When I was a child, many families would even deny their boys to go to school because they thought they will become part of official kind of census, and so they will have to go through certain obligations in terms of the duty, etc. But now, even in the remote areas, people come asking school for their girls from me as their representative. So I think that indicates a transformation of Afghanistan. I hope that this will further increase. We will have more school for girls, quality, but also access will improve.
Afghan parliament today has higher percentage of women representation than we see in many democracies in the developed world. In a post-conflict country like Afghanistan, how important is for a woman to politically empower herself and play a role in influencing the policies and institutions that affect their lives? How important is for women to empower themselves politically?
I'm glad that Afghanistan is ranking 22nd country in the world in terms of having more female percentage in the parliament. That's because of the quota thanks to the constitution of Afghanistan. But in the meantime, I think, as I said before, this transformation of Afghan society into more progressive Afghanistan also impacted the women's lives positively. It's true that there is quota, but it's also true that many people actually voted for women as general seats. So the women managed to get open seats and compete with the man. That indicates that the perspective towards this gender discrimination is changing. There is more willingness to support women. I think it's key in any policies in the world to include women, to encourage women participation, because you cannot have gender sensitive and woman-friendly policies without having women. You cannot in fact talk about women in education, women in health, women in social participation without having women in the leadership. That's the key, because it's only women who are leaders can actually impact their society, change the perspective, can influence the policies, and can basically change the life for other women. So I think it's crucial. It's a beginning. I'm glad that not only specific percentage of women are in the parliament, but even if we didn't have quota, we still had some percentage of women in the parliament. But at least because of the quota, we have now 69 women in the parliament, which makes it 27%.
The Elimination of Violence Against Women law, EVAW law, that was enacted by presidential decree in August 2009. It's the most important legal step taken by the government to criminalize the acts of violence against women and bring culprits to book. How important is its implementation now, and do you see the implementation happening in the near future under the new government?
Well, the law on violence against women, EVA, is one of the major achievements of the current administration in terms of supporting women. Of course, the law needed to be approved by the parliament in order to make it a national document. Right now it's a decree, but we presented the law to the parliament last year, almost around the same time. Unfortunately, it was not approved because of the conservative elements within the parliament. They blocked the law because they thought some of the elements of the law are against Islam, which was their understanding of the, of course, definition of certain articles. I think none of the articles of this law is against Islam, and so therefore it should be approved. In the meantime, we are pursuing the implementation because one important element is approval of the laws, but also implementation. I think right now it's implemented in all over 34 provinces of Afghanistan. Cases in the court are referred according to the law and being decided according to this law. Of course, it still needs a lot of time and awareness and investment to ensure that this law is being regarded as one of the important laws and all the cases of violence against women is being dealt within the law context.
The talk of parliament and the laws, there's a perception that parliament spends, politicians in parliament, parliamentarians, they spend most of their time in politics and not in passing important laws. How do you react to that? Is it perception right or wrong?
Well, I think globally, always there is complaint from the parliament work. Wherever you go in the world, citizens seem to be objecting the work of the parliament, and that's a part of democracy. I see it as part of democracy. We need to be reminded by our citizens on our important duties. We need to be reminded and criticized for what we do, whether it's the right thing or not. But in the meantime, it's a political institution, so we need to do politics. I think we need to strengthen the oversight role of the parliament, which has not been very strong. I think the legislative role of parliament has been to some extent good, but when it comes to the oversight role of parliament, we need to strengthen that.
You were chosen as another 150 most fearless woman in the world by the Daily Peace. You also faced many threats to life and even survived an attack. What is it that keeps you going?
The need for change in my country. That is the thing that motivates me and keeps me moving. I think there are days that we also are deep down. We think that, I personally think that why should I continue if so many political but also security challenges personally, but as a woman, to every woman. There are days that I decide that I shouldn't continue tomorrow. But when I see the need of my people and their demand for a change, that keeps me motivating and keeps me going.
Last year we saw there was little buzz in Western media that you will be running for presidency. Then it didn't happen. So was it a change of plan or was it age factor as was reported? What was it?
Yes, I was planning to run. Unfortunately, the Election Commission brought the registration for candidates, the date, very early. So in fact, the election was held in 2014, and still we are in the process of second round election, and the registration was in October 2013, so it was way too early, and I couldn't complete the eligibility criteria for my age. But I hope that this is one of my dreams. I hope that I will continue to pursue my political life, and in fact, I continue to struggle to be the first woman president in this country. So
you are trying next time?
Hopefully, inshallah.
We just saw, this tragedy in Badakhshan, the province you represent. After that tragic incident, Parliament summoned National Disaster Management Authority and blamed it for lack of preparedness. Do you think this authority could have done more to prevent or at least minimize the damage done?
Well, Afghanistan is a kind of disaster. It's a country that is at risk in terms of natural disasters. My province is one of those affected provinces which is affected by natural disaster, be it landslide or avalanches or flood. Every year we have those kind of we have the natural disasters. I think the Natural Disaster Preparedness Committee should plan in a way that they should prevent more victims and more losses in the when disasters happen. In fact, we cannot stop the disaster. We cannot stop avalanche or flood, but we could stop and prevent more people being killed. I think this is the landslide in Argo district is just a small example of how this province is at risk of natural disasters. So I think it's a hint for our authorities to plan evacuation of those places where there is more at risk of landslide or avalanches or flood, to move them to a safer place. They have not been doing that to prevent more killings. I think that that should be part of their priority.
And how are the relief operations going? I mean, have all the survivors been rehabilitated properly?
Not yet. They have been provided with assistance since the major landslide happened. There were other incidents, also flood, communities that were affected by flood. I hope that the resettlement will happen soon. We have developed a plan for it, along with line ministries. I hope that this plan will be implemented soon.
This year we'll see an important political and security transition. Do you think this military exit by international community has been choreographed and timed well? I mean, in other words, do you think Afghan forces are really capable and really ready to take on the bigger responsibilities?
We need to differentiate between two things. One is Afghan forces' abilities and motivation to keep the country, and one is the need for international community presence. When we ask the need for international community presence, it does not mean we don't believe in our security forces' abilities. We believe that in terms of motivations, in terms of morale, in terms of capabilities, they have all those strengths to be able to defend their country themselves. But in the meantime, the bigger message that the withdrawal of international community gives to the terrorist groups, to the countries who would like to influence negatively in Afghanistan, the bigger message they gave, that is worrisome, because the message would be that Afghanistan will be once again abandoned by international community. So the consequences of that departure will be greater politically into the system of Afghanistan. So I hope that the international community will actually revise their plan. When we have the new government, the BSA between Afghanistan and United States signed, I hope that will open an opportunity for both governments to work closely in terms of the need for troops to be in Afghanistan.
And this year we saw historic and precedented voter turnout in the elections, which was not expected by many people. It was actually a clear verdict for democracy also. But despite that, there were some cases of fraud. Now, since the elections are going to second round, what are the steps, the important steps that should be taken to at least, minimize or at least prevent such cases of fraud happening again in the second round?
Well, I'm glad that at least people of Afghanistan witnessed this experience of democracy in a very good way. Yes, the turnout of people demonstrated that people are pro-democracy. They have a bigger challenge ahead of them, which is the second round of election. I think there are certain things that the candidates do, and there are certain things that the election institutions do to prevent massive, or at least fraud to some extent. For the candidates, they need to make sure that they have agents to monitor their votes in each and every polling station, and they record the cases, and they motivate people to go and vote, because people participation gave a legitimacy to the democracy. For election commission, first of all, they need to keep their neutrality. That's very important. They need to make sure that that the policies and rules and regulations are transparent enough, and it's in the public hand, basically. People see it, and above all is their neutrality.
Despite the strict security measures, but still we see, at least especially in the provinces, terrorists still manage to strike at will. Do you think it's a wise idea to invite these armed opposition groups to negotiations, peace negotiations, or they just need to be,
Well, Afghan government have been doing that. They have been pursuing the so-called peace process for the past 5-6 years, but the response is always negative. The response is more violent, more killing, more the suicide and barbaric act. So I think it's a time for the new government to revise the strategy when it comes to the peace process.
My last question, your memoir, Letters to My Daughters. I mean, in a way, it's not just addressed to your daughters, it's addressed to almost every daughter in Afghanistan. What, if you have to give one piece of advice to them, what would it be?
Oh, it's very difficult to give one piece of advice, but I think this is something I have been saying to my daughters, that they have huge potentials. They can change at least their surrounding. They shouldn't be regarded as half part of the society. They should be regarded as full potential for the society. And women and girls have that potential to explore themselves, explore their opportunity, be decisive on what they do, continue their education and bring the change, and take the risk if necessary for bringing the changes.
Thanks a lot for taking your time out. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank
and
you.
We hope you'll keep doing the great things that you have been doing.
Thank you.